resistance is futile. Your life, as it has been, is over. From this time forward, you will service us.
No! We will not service Washington.
Mr. Worf, fire.
Well, welcome to another exciting episode of the Renegade and the Rambler show, only on Cerberus Radio Network. Oh, it's been quite a week, and we have a ton of mail, mail. Yeah, mail. Okay. We do not have a ton of mail. We have a ton of stories to get to, and we will be having a live episode of the Bailey Report following this. Jeff said he'd be nice enough to stay around and keep me on track so I don't lose my brain. Unless he's just lost
bells. I was hearing bells, and I was like,
it's probably my wife.
I was thinking I was George Bailey, and some of us. I thought it was George Bailey, and somebody was making angels.
Yeah, my wife's Christmas clock is still on the wall, and apparently it's still dinging. I'm going to have to take the battery out of that probably. Christmas is over, and we still have 10 months before Christmas, so there we go. Oh, alrighty. Well, our stats are up, Jeff. Apparently, me staying off the air is good for business. I
don't know about that. Honestly, it's just very interesting. I honestly, last month I was pretty down about this whole thing. I was starting to think, well, what are we spending all this time and effort on? Because I was thinking, nobody's listening. What's the point? And then I haven't really even looked at the analytics on Radio Co, which is nice. Having the analytics on Radio Co really makes it easy. I can sit there and look, and it's really interesting. Actually, we have quite often at least one listener in Holland and one listener in London, and occasionally a listener in Germany. So it's really kind of crazy when you sit there and start watching the analytics. We're reaching people around the world, which is straight, beyond me. But what I was just shocked at is the actual numbers when I started to look at it this last month. Last month was an explosion, and I have no idea. It has to be the listeners sharing the show and stuff. Our shows, Suzanne's, yours, mine. That's the only thing I can attribute to, because I really have not done anything different. I share constantly when there's shows on, but I share our show tonight. It's just, but I appreciate it. I thank the listeners; they're the ones doing it.
Now, apparently, we have a listener in Ireland and one in Denmark tonight. So,
yeah, I think that did I say Norway? I meant Denmark. If I said Norway, I meant Denmark. There's that guy listens all the time.
Holland.
Is it Holland? Did I say? It was Denmark. It's Denmark where it is. That's a common listener. He's on there often, and if you're listening right now, welcome. We appreciate it. Welcome to our show tonight. I hope you enjoy it. We are this. I'm going to just go off on a little tangent here. Anyway, we don't care about labels here. We don't buy into the conservative, liberal, right, left, Republican, Democrat. You name your label. We don't buy into that. We buy into liberty, and that's what we push here. We believe that man has natural rights. We believe that governments can try to take natural rights away. They can by force do that, but they're still inherent in man. We don't ever give up natural rights. And we will call out our leaders when they're doing wrong. And Daniel, we were talking before the show. I know where we're going. We both have the same stack of articles. And we're going to call out our leadership, our country's leaders, I don't no. Our union's leaders, excuse me. We aren't a country. We are a union of 50 countries. So anyway, thank you for listening.
We can call out my union anytime you want, boss.
Yeah. Well,
they might not like it, but they're more than welcome to jump on in here and defend themselves. I'm willing to have them.
Yeah. So anyway, thank you, listeners, for all that you do and all your sharing and all your and continue listening and help us grow. If you like what you're hearing, share us. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. I mean, we'd love for you. There's what now, Daniel? We have to have 134, 135 episodes of all of our shows now on YouTube. We have quite a few. There's a lot of you can listen to 135 hours of shows on YouTube if you want to. I mean, so subscribe to our radio YouTube channel.
139.
139. I haven't looked in a few days.
It'll be over 140 after today. We're up to 73 subscribers on YouTube. And that's that I don't care sharing because everybody can see that stat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
we need
so
4,000 in order to make money off of this. But
yeah.
We're
please share our YouTube channel. If you're listening to us and you listen on YouTube, share our channel. We appreciate it because you guys are the ones, you're our advertisers. We don't spend money on advertising. We don't charge to listen. This is all out of pocket, and we do it because we want to defend liberty. So thank you for listening, and thank you for getting our stats up. It was humbling when I looked at that last month. So I'm encouraged, and I hope that this month we can just keep growing from there. So you're ready, Daniel? You want to kick us off there?
Go right into the first story.
Go ahead and kick us off. I don't know which one you want to start with. I mean, because there's a whole stack. I mean, there's.
Okay.
Let's go with the background one. Hold on a second. Let me find this one here.
Oh, you got one?
Let me go to this one here. Where is it? Oh, goodness. I thought I had one that was basically the background of it, and I do not. All right. So I don't know. At any rate, Donald Trump this week announced that he was going to impose a tariff, a 25% tariff on imported steel and a 10% tariff on imported aluminum. So that's the background. I thought I had a New York Times story here, and I'm sure I do. I know I have a New York Times story about that here somewhere in my stack, my pile of prep. Because like I said, I have so many articles on this. It's just crazy.
I got ones from the Sky News over in Britain on this.
Yeah, I have those right here too. I just didn't want to lead with those because I wanted to set the. All right, so let's set the table as far as history, Daniel. Because this is nothing new. We have done this before. I don't know if that's where you were going to go with this, or were you going to do that on your show? Afterwards,
we'll hit it both times. But
what's that? Okay,
we'll probably hit it both times. They'll probably bleed over, but yeah. Basically,
we had Smoot Hawley.
So Smoot Hawley. This goes back before Smoot Hawley, I believe. When was Smoot Hawley done? When was Smoot Hawley done, Jeff? Way back? When was the Smoot Hawley deal done? Wasn't that World War I, World War II?
That was right early 1920s.
Okay. Well, this might shock you, Jeff, but this goes all the way back to Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Public Debt is good. And if you've listened to any of my shows and any of Jeff's shows, we don't think that debt is ever good. And trade wars equal debt. But anyway, I digress. Mr. Hamilton was obviously often most of his brain cells, I guess, got beat out during the Revolutionary War. So Hamilton is basically the father of the Whig Party. If you know who the Whig Party is. The Whigs were very good on this American system. The American system, basically, it's what we live under today. Yes, but it comes from Mr. Hamilton. Mr. Hamilton passed it on to Mr. Henry Clay. Henry Clay is the renowned one that made tariffs so popular in the South, they almost seceded well before 1861. In fact, I think it was under Andrew Jackson. Yeah, Andrew Jackson, I believe. That the South almost left the Union due to improperly executed tariffs coming in and out of Southern ports. Because the North was very good about taxing only certain items that would affect Southern agriculture, but not affect Northern mercantilists. It's called mercantilism is the whole principle. Basically, the way it works, and I know this is going to shock you, Jeff. You're never going to realize where this came from, but apparently what we live under today started back in 1805-ish. The mercantilist system was a system where politicians would get money from lobbyists to put tariffs in place to, quote, protect American businesses. This was not normally done, but they would do internal improvements, quote unquote, infrastructure projects today that would help these businesses out, or they give them tax breaks, or they protect them from foreign trade, i.e., the steel and aluminum business. Now, this was basically kept in check until roughly the late 1850s, early 1860s. And finally, about 1861, the South said, we're done, and they left. Lincoln was a huge proponent of this. And it's just gotten worse. Reconstruction was a mess. But, you don't want tariffs. You don't want duties. You don't want any of this stuff. It's just going to make this price that you pay much more expensive. It's going to make the quality you get a lot less, and all you're going to do is suffer under it. It's a lose-lose. It just hurts everybody.
Well, the whole that's true. And what's really interesting about what you just said, as far as Hamilton and these others that imposed tariffs on the South. See, this was the whole point of the Constitution, the Commerce Clause in the Constitution. Not that they can regulate every bit of commerce in the United States. That was not the purpose. But that's what they do, but that wasn't the purpose. And if you read their debates, it was to make commerce regular between the states. So, in essence, one state couldn't pass a tariff on another state's products. Yet, that is precisely what the general government did with the South. It passed a tariff on Southern ones to the benefit of the Northern states. So you can see where the Constitution was going off the rails already in the early 1800s. But while we were talking before the show, we'll get to that in a minute. But we talked about that all the way back to General George Washington and President Washington, the very first one. It was already at the very first president where they went off the rails. When we get to Donald Trump now, it's really no surprise that he's doing what he does. I mean, because all the way back to George Washington, it's already been going on. So there's nothing new. But the one thing about tariffs is that it is a trade war. This is not just some benign tax. This is basically a trade war. He is opening a trade war. I'm going to just read a paragraph from an old Mises article. This is from, let's see. I want to say this was from, here it is, December 7th, 2012. So it is 5+ years old. How U.S. economic warfare provoked Japan's attack on Pearl Harbor. I'm just going to read 2 paragraphs. In June 1940, Henry L. Stimson, who had been Secretary of War under William Howard Taft and Secretary of State under Herbert Hoover, became Secretary of War again. Stimson was a lion of the Anglophile, northeastern upper crust, and no friend of the Japanese. In support of the so-called open door policy for China, Stimson favored the use of economic sanctions to obstruct Japan's advance in Asia. Treasury Secretary Henry Morgenthau and Interior Secretary Harold Ickes vigorously endorsed this policy. Roosevelt hoped that such sanctions would goad the Japanese into making a rash mistake by launching a war against the United States, which would bring in Germany because Japan was Germany were allied. The Roosevelt administration, while curtly dismissing Japanese diplomatic overtures to harmonize relations, accordingly imposed a series of increasingly stringent economic sanctions on Japan in 1939. The United States terminated the 1911 Commerce Treaty with Japan. On July 20, 1940, Roosevelt signed the Export Control Act, authorizing the president to license or prohibit the export of essential defense materials. Under the authority, on July 31, exports of aviation motor fuels and lubricants and number one heavy melting iron and steel scrap were restricted. Next in a move aimed at Japan, Roosevelt slapped an embargo effective October 16 on all exports of scrap iron and steel to destinations other than Britain and the nations of the Western Hemisphere. Finally, on July 26, 1941, Roosevelt froze Japanese assets in the United States, thus bringing commercial relations between the nations to an effective end. 1 week later, Roosevelt embargoed the export of such grades of oil as still were in commercial flow to Japan. The British and the Dutch followed suit, embargoing exports to Japan from their colonies in Southeast Asia. And we all know where this ended up, in a world war. Trade wars are not benign. This is not something that is just going to end up all roses and happiness and wonderful unicorns and rainbows after Trump goads the world into hating our guts. I mean, they don't like us very much already. Let's just make them all angry at us, and let's see how well that works out for us. Or we can have another Smoot Hawley and end up in another Great Depression. This is not just some little thing. So, I mean, you had some articles from across the pond over in Britain. I know from Sky News.
Yeah, which apparently they've been they're not very happy right now. Let's see this one. Donald Trump threatens tax on European cars if EU retaliates. Let me see if I can find there was one in here.
Let's see, 3, 4. Let me just see what the dates on these two articles, because I have them both here printed out in front of me. They're both from 3, 4. The Sky News, the Donald Trump threatens cars, and Theresa May tells Donald Trump of deep concern over U.S. trade tariffs. They were both from the 4th.
Here's one from the 2nd. Trump steel tariff plan sparks UK backlash and trade war fears. Let's see. The UK steel industry has warned Donald Trump's plan for steep U.S. tariffs on steel imports would seriously undermine its competitiveness. The announcement by the U.S. president sparked an immediate threat of countermeasures. But I mean, where do we talk about countermeasures all the time, Jeff? Is that something that normal peaceful countries talk about, countermeasures? From Europe, and sent world stock markets plunging amid fears of a global trade war and higher costs for U.S. manufacturers. Which, again, this is not going to benefit anybody. This is stupid. And Mr. Trump tweeted, "Trade wars are good." Hours after explaining that his measures were a response to decades of disgraceful, unfair trade policies, the U.S. steel industry suffering from cheap Chinese steel coming on the market, driving down prices. The president did not specify whether his plan would apply worldwide or just to major world players such as China and India, but it was enough for UK producers to warn of a devastating impact if the country was targeted. The announcement of proposals for a 25% tariff on steel imports and a 10% levy on aluminum came despite apparent internal White House wrangling over the strategy. Trump summoned U.S. industry executives on Thursday and told them what's been allowed to go on for decades is disgraceful. You will have protection for the first time in a long time. Or, my bad, I misread that. You will have protection for the first time in a long while, and you're going to regrow your industries. We're going to build our steel industry back and our aluminum industry back. Trump had earlier tweeted that many U.S. industries have been decimated by decades of unfair trade and bad policy. Let's see. The tweet was, our steel and aluminum industries and many others have been decimated by decades of unfair trade and bad policy with countries from around the world. We
Daniel,
must...
okay.
Yes.
Daniel, I want to interrupt right there because all these imports, and there's not that many. We don't import much steel and aluminum. Most of ours is domestic. So this is a very small fraction. Let me see. I have a New York Times. Let me see what they say. The percentage. I think they said about a third of our steel and aluminum comes from around the world. Yeah, about 30%. So only about 30% of our steel and aluminum comes from around the world. So the majority of our steel and aluminum we get here. We make here. So we're not talking a big amount. Okay, now I just lost my track trying to find that article. So anyway, go ahead. I lost it now. That's age.
Were you referring to the anti-dumping laws that have already been on effect since, I believe, Reagan?
No, I wasn't. But
China and India are under the anti-dumping thing.
I know exactly where I was going again. I remember now. Anyway, so foreign competition is not what's killing our industry here. What's killing our industry here is our government. Our government's regulations. They regulate these industries so strongly, it is cheaper for them to go elsewhere to make their steel and aluminum and import it back.
It's cheaper for them to go to a country like Germany with a VAT tax that taxes the bejeebies out of it than it is for them to make it here in the U.S. It's ridiculous. And it's all because it's not because of tax code. It's because of regulations.
Well, it's regulation and taxes. We are either number one or number two of the highest corporate taxes in the world. So it's our taxes.
After the tax cut.
Well, after the tax cut, we're not going to be that high up. But before the tax cut, we were about the second. First, I think Japan's the only one that was ahead of us in taxes. But anyway, so it's our taxes and our regulation that drive companies elsewhere. And that's why they import them back, because it's cheaper for them to do business elsewhere. And businesses are going to go where they can maximize their profits. They're not going to stay here and put up with the crap that our government makes them go, all the hoops they make them jump through. They're going to go where they don't have to jump through the hoops. So stop blaming these other countries, Trump. It's not them. It's you guys. You guys are the problem. Reagan was right. Government is not the solution to the problem. Government is the problem.
Yes.
So go ahead. I'm sorry. Go on with the article.
Oh, no, you're fine. You're fine. Richard Warren, head of policy at UK Steel, responded, well, we still await the precise details of this measures, and there is still a lingering hope that these tariffs may not target the UK and EU. President Trump's comments do indicate the introduction of blanket measures to restrict the import of all steel imports, regardless of their origin. This would be a unilateral and extremely blunt approach to what is a complex global problem of overcapacity in the steel sector, i.e., there's too much steel out there and not enough demand. Putting a tariff on that is not going to fix that. This requires a coordinated global approach. Whilst we all too well understand the frustrations of the U.S. sector, measures such as the smack of short-termism, protectionism, and would be rife with unintended consequences for global trade and for the users of steel in the U.S. Let's see. At a UK level, our sector exports some 360 million pounds. That's British pounds, pound sterling, worth of high-value steel products into the U.S. each year, almost 15% of our exports. These measures... Got it? My computer jumped. These measures would seriously undermine our ability to compete in this market. The industry body also warns of risk to competitiveness without any tariffs on UK exports because it expected that steel diverted from the US would find its way to other markets, including Britain. Steel trade war could provide catastrophic for UK producers at a time when the sector is still recovering from its own crisis, also created by increased global production that saw a flood of cheap steel from China force prices down. The United Union demanded government action to ensure there was no impact on the UK. A Downing Street spokesman said, "We don't yet know if the UK will be included in any tariffs. We are working across government to get to the bottom of this." Yes, we're getting to the bottom of this. Oh, yes, my favorite European Commissioner. European Commission President Jean-Claude Juncker also reacted with horror. This is absolutely horrifying, apparently, to the threat, saying the move appeared to be a blatant intervention to protect U.S. industry and could only aggravate matters. Of course, it's to protect U.S. businesses. I honestly, did he not say it was to protect U.S. businesses? Quote unquote.
Yep, he did. Hold on a second. Let's go to the New York Times. The real risks of Trump's steel and aluminum tariffs. Not a terribly conservative paper, but in this case, they're actually right. March 1st, 2018. Who wins? Who loses? First sentence. The big winners are the United States steel and aluminum industries, which have lobbied for years for this kind of aggressive government action. So we have two industries that have been paying millions and millions of dollars to politicians over the years to get something done, and they expect results, and Trump is going to deliver on their to pay off all the millions of dollars given to these people in government. These people are all millionaires. They didn't become millionaires making $173,000 a year. So how did they become millionaires?
Well,
these two industries have been lobbying for decades.
How does the governor of Louisiana go from a $5,000 salary and make $3 million during a 2-year span as governor in Louisiana during Reconstruction? It's government corruption. It's always been government corruption. This has been around. Again, this goes all the way back to 1865. Thank you, Mr. Lincoln. We protect our buddies because our buddies fund our campaign. Literally, this is mercantilism. It's not going to fix the problem. It's going to make the problem worse.
Let's go back.
That's why Britain dropped this whole scheme back in the late 1800s. Okay,
let's go back to June 5th, 1788. I'm going to read some more of this tomorrow morning. Let's go back to Mr. Henry and his opposition to the Constitution and what he is warning of. This is a warning. It's not a specific warning, but it's a warning. You are not to inquire how your trade may be increased. So all the way back then, they had the problem then, and we have the problem today. They had people that were going to government and using government to increase their trade. And this was really, I read an article the other day, and this was very common in Britain. They were the politicians over there were all for sale. So that tradition was not something new or unknown to these American politicians. And Henry was warning, you are not to inquire how your trade may be increased. But that's exactly what we have today. We have a bunch of politicians that are up for sale to increase somebody's trade. And here we go. The steel industry and aluminum industries are going to be the big winners because they paid enough to somebody to get what they wanted.
Hey, Jeff, do you know where the term lobbyist comes from?
I don't know.
Mr. DiLorenzo wrote this in his book. The person that originally penned the word lobbyist was President Grant. And he penned it because he was referring to all the people that would sit in the hotels in D.C. and bribe the senators and congressmen as they were going to take their votes in the lobby of the hotels. That's what they did. They would literally sit in the hotel, walk up to a legislator and go, how much do I have to pay you to get you to vote X? That's how governments run. What?
Like I said, these people aren't getting rich. These people aren't getting rich on that $173,000 a year, but they're all millionaires. They all go there middle class and all leave there multimillionaires. And we are the ones that are paying the price of those people being there legislating.
The one that aggravates me the most, it'll blow your mind. Nancy Pelosi's husband owns Del Monte. Okay. Del Monte gets a lot of their stuff from the islands in the Pacific that the U.S. has a territory over. What is it? The U.S., not the U.S. Virgin Islands. There's U.S. islands out there in the South Pacific. We got them after World War II. I
think Guam's one of them. We have Samoa.
Yeah, Guam's one of them. There's a couple other ones. We got them during the Spanish-American War, and we got them during World War II. But anyway, when they were doing this whole hullabaloo over, we got to raise the minimum wage. We got to raise the minimum wage. People are going to starve to death if we don't raise the minimum wage. Do you know what they did to those poor islands? They exempted them from the minimum wage increase. So if you're in the U.S., you get paid whatever minimum wage is. But if you're from the island, they can still pay you $3 an hour. Sounds fair, don't it? Especially when you find out that the biggest proponent to the minimum wage increase happened to have a controlling interest in not raising the minimum wage in the area of the country that her business was operating out of. And yes, it's her business because if I'm correct, under California law, that's communal property, and therefore her husband owning it means she owns it. And she should have to divest her interest in it because of this. Well, she should have to divest her interest anyway because she's part of government, but that's another story altogether. It's amazing how you can insider trade as a representative, but when you become a business person, you can't do that anymore. Wonder how her husband does it. Anyway. We're going to take a break here. This is the Renegade and the Rambler show, only on the Cerberus Radio Network. We'll be right back after this.
Paul, are these two men in the middle insufficiently conservative for you?
Well, I think that the problem is nobody's defined what being conservative means. And I think that is our problem. Conservatives means we have smaller government and more liberty. And yet, if you ask what have we done, I think we've lost our way completely. Our rhetoric is still pretty good. But when we get in charge, we expand the government. You talk about Dodd-Frank, but we gave Sarbanes-Oxley. We gave debts as well, when we're in charge. So if it means limited government, you have to ask a basic question: what should the role of government be? The founders asked that question, had a revolution, wrote a constitution. And they said the role of government ought to be to protect liberty. It's not to run a welfare state and not to be the policeman of the world. And so if you're going to conservative, how can you be conservative and cut food stamps, but you won't cut spending overseas? There's not a nickel or penny that anybody will cut on the conservative side overseas spending, and we don't have the money. They're willing to start more wars.
Farmers, we've seen
So I say if you're
almost everything, so we
conservative,
know
you
how to
want
cover
small
almost
government
anything.
across the
Even a
board,
red hot
especially
mascot.
in personal liberty. What's wrong with having people, the government from our personal lives? So this is what we have to decide what conservative means, what limited government means. And I have a simple suggestion. We have a pretty good guide, and if we follow the Constitution, government would be very small, and we would all be devoted conservatives.
Cerberus Radio Network, protecting liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny.
Now I'm going to have to send State Farm a bill for having their ad play on my radio show. Bad State Farm. Stop it with your ads on these news night sites. They're driving me nuts. Anyway, this is the Renegade and the Rambler show, only on the Cerberus Radio Network. Jeff, did you hear that State Farm ad? I'm going to have to send them a bill.
No, I didn't. I was up away from the computer. I had to get up for a minute and go get a drink, and so I had the headphones off, and I was gone. Actually, I just turned my phone, the app. I hit the app on the phone, and go to our website, our Facebook page, and hit use app, and you can get the app. And you can listen to the show on your phone. And I just put it on my phone so I could see where we're at, and I had to run back in because I heard it was ending. So anyway, I'm back. That's why my camera came on a little late, because I wasn't even sitting down yet.
I figured you were up. Anyway, we're going to cover this. We're going to completely change topics here and go to a different thing. Just because I need to close this window, because I am tired of getting a State Farm ad about a baseball guy's car being on fire because, I don't know, he's a flaming fireball. I don't know. I don't understand the commercial, but apparently State Farm covered it. But anyway, I digress. As soon as I find where my mouth is at.
That's why I have stacks of paper, because I print everything out, and actually I was just sitting here looking at the stacks of prep I have, and I was thinking I have got to get file folders, and I need to just file all this stuff, because I literally have stacks of
my company
stuff.
would be in mortal pain if they caught me, printing that much paper. Remember, I work for the brown company that wants to be the green company. That's a joke.
Not worried about it. I'm keeping the paper maker in business. I'm keeping the toner person for my printer in business. I am helping out guys keep their jobs. So I'm not worried about it.
You're helping us truckers out by having to ship all this stuff to you too.
That's right.
We appreciate your hard-earned money.
And Amazon uses UPS often. Matter of fact, I don't know if they use it pretty much exclusively, because almost everything UPS delivered, I just put the new cartridge in my printer because the other one was empty. I started printing tonight, and they were pretty much not there, so I had to put the new one in tonight. So
since we're a little off topic here, just fair warning, you might want to put an extra piece of metal or something over your windows, because you're in the area where UPS would really like to use a drone to deliver your packages. But I'm pretty sure if you look through their 9,000 pages you have to sign for your shipment documents, it's going to say somewhere, UPS is not responsible for any drone accident that happens on your property. These will try to be limited. However, this could include breaking of glass, breaking of car windows, concussions, possible maim. Trust me, UPS will write some disclaimer that they're not responsible for anything this device does once it leaves the truck.
Well, unfortunately, though, I never signed that disclaimer. I bought a product from somebody. If they signed this disclaimer, that's fine.
You'll do that, right?
I'll sue them both. I don't know. Just go ahead, break my windows. I'll sue you both. And I didn't sign any disclaimer. I won't sign any disclaimer. You know, if you break something, you're paying for it.
I like that. Yeah. This is such a great idea. Or the driverless trucks. There's about 8 of them on the country. Want to know how many rollovers they've had so far, Jeff?
How many?
2. And they operate in the easiest area of the country to drive a truck. But yet they still have 2 rollovers. That's actually, I want to say, more than industry average per truck. But I don't know anything. I'm just a dumb truck driver that sits behind a wheel all day.
So where did you want to go? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I thought you were done.
Here's your PSA announcement. If you're broke down in your car and you're on the Pennsylvania Turnpike or any major interstate for that matter, and you're in the left lane, FedEx runs the left lane. You'll want to exit your vehicle and proceed up the hill at, I don't know, the speed of light. Horrible accident on PA Turnpike, by the way. That was horrible. I should have got some pictures of it, but I was too busy dodging debris. And no, I was not involved. I drove through the aftermath of where this one company took out this car that was supposedly stopped in the left lane, no lights on, no blinkers, no triangles, no nothing. So I thought I'd throw out that little PSA. Okay, for something that's going to get your blood pressure up here, Jeff, and since we're already on the whole tirade about unconstitutional acts, maybe that would help if I turned autoplay off. Anyway, well, my computer's jumped around. Trump, take the guns first. Go through due process second. This sounds lovely, doesn't it? I'm pretty sure this is a violation of 6 articles or amendments inside of the Bill of Rights, but let's continue. President Trump on Wednesday voiced support for confiscating guns from certain individuals deemed to be dangerous, even if it violates due process rights. Okay, I'm not a constitutional scholar, Jeff, but where's the due process rights guaranteed to us in this fabled document we're told we have to live under?
I am not sure. I probably in the Fifth Amendment, maybe, or Fourth Amendment. I'm going to say it's one of the two. Had to be fourth or fifth.
Fourth. The fifth one is you can't incriminate yourself. It also violates, wait for it, the 2nd, the 9th, the 10th. So let's see. Out of 10, we violated 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm pretty sure we can find a 5th one somewhere.
No, they have to have a warrant. They have to have a warrant to come in and take anything out of the house anyway.
Well, that's under article. That's a due process.
So that they're breaking that one as well.
So 2, 4, 5, 9, 10, and okay, we're up to 5 of 10. So, and I'm pretty sure Suzanne could come up with a couple more. So,
well, anyway, I don't think they're housing soldiers in the houses, so they're not breaking that one. So we can get rid of that one. So he's safe on that until he's going to house the police in these people's houses to make sure they don't commit acts of violence.
Make sure the ARs are locked up. So we'll have to have an officer on site,
and then they'll have to house them. So then we might hopefully then they'd be breaking another one. Not that it matters.
Well, they're probably breaking the article or Amendment 1, because they're going to basically take your guns away based on what someone else says. And that could be, I don't know. I could say I'm a secessionist, and well, that worries them, so therefore they think I'm insane. So they violated my free speech right. Then they violated my Second Amendment right, which isn't actually a Second Amendment right, but for the case of this argument,
thank you. Let's make sure we're very clear on this. That none of these are rights guaranteed by the Constitution. We're not talking constitutional rights.
Right. We're just talking rights. What they say they can't do.
Right.
So they say they can't violate my free speech, yet they're going to. They can't take my weapons, but they want to. Let's see. The house prisoners are not gonna, or not prisoners. We haven't hired military for prisoners yet, have we? Then Article 4 is I'm supposed to have there's a judge is supposed to sign off on a warrant before they can come in my house. We're going to skip that one. That gets in the way. The fifth one, well, we're not going to give you a chance to plead your case because we're just going to take your stuff anyway. Let's see. 6 and 7, I don't think apply. I'm not sure about 8. And 9 and 10 say that the rights not designated, which this would be, are reserved to the people and to the states, respectively. So, thank you, Mr. Trump. But anyway, here's the exact quote from Mr. Trump. I start again. I like taking the guns early, like in this crazy man's case that just took place in Florida. Note, in the Florida one, the cops were called to the house 26 times. The FBI was notified twice. This happened over a span of 6 months. I don't know about you, Jeff, but it doesn't take that long to get a warrant from a judge. It takes, I believe, let's see. If you violate the Game Commission orders in the state of Pennsylvania, it takes a game warden a total of about 3 minutes to get a warrant out of his car and seize whatever he thinks he needs to see.
It can be done over the phone. It can be done over the phone.
So this isn't a problem with they can't get a warrant. They just choose not to do their job.
Yeah, and the thing is, as far as the police hero down there, and I don't have the article. Suzanne and I discussed it the other day right after the shooting. We did a show about it, and there was an article explaining Broward County and how they have changed their policing policies because they didn't want to have all these arrests because it meant more money for the schools if they weren't arresting all these kids that were breaking the law in Broward County. So these kids were just getting free passes. And this guy was on the radar. As you said, I thought there was up to about, they had been there almost 30 times, maybe 29 or 32 times or something like that. But 26, 29, 32, I mean, how many do you have to go before you do something? Obviously, more than 32, if that's the number it was.
We're not even getting into the fact that there was, I think, 4 different resource officers, and they, quote, were told by a commanding officer, do not go in unless you have body cameras and to hold the perimeter while kids were getting shot up.
Right. Well, there was one resource officer. He's the one that retired because he didn't go in. Then there were three others showed up. So now there was 4 Broward County sheriffs there. And all 4 of them were outside. That's where they're the ones that were told to go in. Yeah, the other 3 showed up, and now there's 4 of them, and they still didn't go in because their supervisor told them they didn't have body cameras, they can't go in. Okay, here's my take from the law enforcement angle. If my supervisor, if I were on road patrol, if I were in Broward County and I was on road patrol and I responded to a shooting in progress and I arrived with 2 other officers and there was one already there, my supervisor tells me not to go in, tough luck. Stop me.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say. Body cameras, forget you. I'm being very family friendly, folks. Forget you. I'm going in there. I know what my carnal side wanted to say something much worse there, but I by the grace of God I didn't. So anyway, the fact of the matter is, I would have said no. I would have gone in. I would have faced the consequences afterwards. My guess is the public outcry would be such that if they tried to fire me over going in, I'm thinking it would never happen. And so, just from my experience in law enforcement, that order would be ignored by a lot of people. Obviously, not these Broward County sheriff deputies. They stayed outside until the local police department arrived and they went in. The local police did. And then those guys decided, well, I guess we got to go in too.
What I love is they said about Well, we need body cameras on. I wonder if that brand new Lamborghini Diablo they got there has a camera in it.
I don't know. I saw that picture. I shared it. I don't know.
Talk about misuse of funds. But anyway, I'm sure it's fun to drive. I would love.
I'm sure it's a blast to drive. I'm sure they exceed the speed limit often with that thing.
So if you want to exceed the speed limit, get a job as a police officer and plaster your department's name all over your Lamborghini, and then you drive whatever speed you want. Nobody's going to pull you over. Oh, I should make fun of law enforcement. They do a great service when they do the service.
I don't know. Well, yeah, in this situation, they could have done a lot better job. And honestly, what happened, and reading the reports now, the police didn't end this shooting. The shooter had a malfunction of the AR that he was shooting with only 10 round mags. These were not high capacity mags. He had 10 round mags. He had a malfunction, couldn't clear it, dropped the gun, and mingled in with the other students that were leaving and left the premises. So the police never ended that. Was that?
I said that was very convenient.
Yeah, he just blended in with the other students and left. So the police never stopped him. They made the arrest outside of the school elsewhere. So the Broward County sheriffs have something that they have some culpability in this, but civilly, I'm sure there's going to be civil lawsuits against Broward County, and honestly, they ought to lose big because they have Suzanne and I had this. It's the same. Suzanne's not here because we got in a discussion with somebody on one of her posts, decrying us about saying bad things about law enforcement, and I see it all the time. As a matter of fact, I responded one tonight. Someone says, if you're not going to put on the uniform of a police officer and go protect people, or put on the uniform, don't say anything against them. Well, you know what? My response was, listen, people have the right they have a natural right to free expression. And you know what? I'm not going to deny them their ability to think for themselves. If they want to make a comment, that's fine. They can comment. Just because they're not putting on the uniform, they can comment. And don't censor people because I'm in law enforcement and somehow you feel it's your duty to censor other people that make comments about law enforcement. I make comments all the time. I did it at work the other day. I said, yeah, well, law enforcement has turned into nothing more than a bunch of meter maids. I mean, they're out there sitting there, you see them all the time sitting on the highway. They're just toll collectors. They're out there they're tax collectors, exactly what they are. They're just out there imposing a tax on you, all in the name of public safety. No, it's not safety. It's a tax. That's all it is, plain and simple. So law enforcement has turned into a taxing agency. They are the IRS with guns on the streets.
The annoying part about that is these same law enforcement officers, well, if you're not going to don a badge, then don't criticize how I do my job. This is the same guy that will pull over a trucker who can't drive 11 hours without sitting beside the road and taking a nap. And the truck driver is trying to follow 18,000 different pages of regulation, and he'll criticize how the driver's doing his job. But the same officer doesn't want the same criticism. So I don't have any beef directly with officers. They just need to, this was a major screw up.
I work with them.
Move along.
I work with them. I know them all. And honestly, I said it at work that law enforcement has become a tax collecting agency. We're not in the law enforcement business anymore. It's all about collecting taxes.
Well, and the only reason they go after drugs is because they're not taxed. That's the only reason they go after drugs anymore.
So I'm sorry. You know what? I'm not going to apologize. If I offended anyone in law enforcement out there, I'm sorry. I'm not sorry. It's the truth. Be honest with yourself. We are not there to protect and serve. The old protect and serve is long gone. We are there to collect, and that's it. Collect the bills. Collect the money.
trying to think of what the name of that car, the Decepticon car was, to conquer and enslave or something like that. But anyway, that's not relevant. I'm just getting off here. Anyway, Trump said, take the guns first, go through due process. Second, which you know full well, those guns are going to get, quote, lost in the system. You're never going to see those guns again. Even if it was proven that the cops went into the wrong home, they were actually supposed to be at a home across the street, but they went in your home, took your guns. You're never going to see those guns again. 95% of the time, they are going to be destroyed immediately, or they're just going to disappear. It's ridiculous how easy it is for them to get rid of stuff when they want to. Trump was responding to comments from Vice President Pence that families and local law enforcement should have more tools to report potentially dangerous individuals with weapons. Allow due process so no one's rights are trampled, but the ability to go to court, obtain an order, and then collect not only the firearms, but any weapons. So we're not even going to go after just firearms. We're going to go after, I guess, hatchets, cars, knives, axes, mallets, baseball bats. I guess they're going to completely gut your house when they come to get your guns, because we got to remove all weapons. Don't have a pocket knife, I guess. Or, Mike, take the firearms first and then go to court, Trump responded. Dear Lord. Trump met with lawmakers on Wednesday to discuss gun laws and school safety in the aftermath of the February 14th shooting that left 17 people dead. Suspect shooter was able to legally purchase the AR-15. No idea if that was an actual Armalite rifle, but anyway, reportedly used in the shooting, despite numerous calls to law enforcement about his unstable behavior. So now that clears that one away. So I guess we need to close this one out and get the other one fired up. Jeff, we got about 3 minutes here.
Let me just
go ahead.
Finish up with one thought on that. It was interesting to watch that. I watched the YouTubes of that whole exchange, and Mike Pence was sitting there. Well, we'll give him due process, and he was touting California's laws about people turning. So basically, out there, if someone decides that you're a threat because you're a liberty-minded person, you're a threat. They make a phone call to the police. The police will come in and take your stuff away because someone made a threat, a statement that you're some sort of threat. No due, but Pence was touting their laws. So all you people out there that are so enamored with a national concealed carry permit, whose laws do you think they're going to use to be the basis for this concealed carry law? You got California and New York's that are some of the most stringent. My guess is you're going to see it's going to be California and New York. So in essence, in Pennsylvania, we're going to have our state constitution totally ignored because our constitution is very good on gun rights. And we're going to have New York and California's laws forced on us by a tyrannical government in Washington, D.C. Enough said. Good night, Daniel, for this show.
Good night, Jeff. And this has been the Renegade and the Rambler show. Remember, we will be right back after this with a brand new The Bailey Report with your host, me, of course. And Jeff's going to be joining me. And we're going to bring this right back up. So stay tuned. There'll be a brief exit. If you're listening on the app, it will be unaffected by what's about to happen. See you on the other side.